The text message came at 2 in the morning. The case has been dismissed. Your family's fraud charges are being forwarded to the district attorney. Congratulations, Ms. Vance. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. After 3 years of planning 9 months of legal warfare and a lifetime of being treated like garbage by the people who were supposed to love me, it was finally over. I had won. They had lost everything. Then the second message arrived. My mother. Please, Audrey, we need to talk. Your father is in the hospital. We have nothing left. 6 words that once would have destroyed me. 6 words that would have sent the old me racing to that hospital, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, offering whatever money they needed. 6 words designed to make me feel guilty for finally standing up for myself. I sat in the darkness of my lakefront study, the one in the house I bought with my own money in the life I built, while they called me worthless, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just a cold, clear certainty that some bridges deserve to burn. The girl who would have dropped everything to save them died a long time ago. They killed her with every insult, every comparison, every moment they chose my golden boy brother over me. And from her ashes, I became someone they never saw coming. If you're watching this story, hit that like button right now because what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refused to be victims anymore. And drop a comment telling me if you've ever had to cut off toxic family members because I read every single one and your stories matter. Now let me take you back to where this all started because you need to understand exactly how the disappointment daughter became. The woman who brought an entire family empire crashing down. 3 years ago, I was nobody in my family's eyes. Worse than nobody. I was the disappointment, the black sheep, the daughter who couldn't get her life together while her golden brother soared to success. At least, that's what they told everyone at their elaborate dinner parties in the house I secretly owned. My name is Audrey Vance, and this is the story of how I went from being my family's punching bag to the woman who brought their entire world crashing down. Growing up in the Vance household was like living in a hierarchy where I was permanently at the bottom. Love wasn't something you received freely. It was earned through achievements, through meeting impossible standards, through being someone you weren't. And I could never earn enough. My brother Ethan was 3 years older and might as well have been royalty. He was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. Charismatic and charming with an easy smile that made adults trust him instantly, he knew exactly how to work a room. He played varsity football, pulled B's without studying, and had mastered the art of schmoozing at Dad's business dinners by the time he was 16. He would stand there in his Letterman jacket, shaking hands with millionaires, cracking jokes that made them laugh, and my father would beam with pride. Me, I was the weird one, the quiet bookworm who preferred computers to people. While Ethan was scoring touchdowns, I was in my room teaching myself to code. While he was charming Dad's clients, I was building websites and taking apart software to see how it worked. I thought maybe being smart would be enough. I thought maybe if I excelled academically, they would see my value. I was wrong. My father, Richard Vance, was a self-made real estate developer who had clawed his way up from nothing and never let anyone forget it. He measured every human being by their net worth and social connections. To him, success meant designer suits, expensive watches, country club memberships, and properties with impressive square footage. He wore his wealth like armor, $3,000 suits that couldn't quite hide the cruelty in his eyes. When he looked at you, he was calculating your value, and most people came up short in his ledger. But his real weapon wasn't money. It was his voice. The way he could deliver an insult so casually like he was commenting on the weather. The way he could make you feel worthless with just a look across the dinner table. He wielded disappointment like a knife cutting away at your self-worth piece by piece until you started to believe you really were as useless as he said. My mother, Eleanor Vance, was the perfect accessory to my father's success. Elegant and graceful, always dressed impeccably, hair and makeup flawless, she played the role of the devoted corporate wife to perfection. At charity galas and business dinners, she was charming and warm, the kind of woman other women envied and men found delightful. She knew how to laugh at the right jokes, compliment the right people, make everyone feel special. But behind closed doors, she was silent, complicit. She had learned early in their marriage that peace meant agreeing with Richard no matter what. Even when he was wrong, even when he was cruel, even when his target was her own daughter. I used to wonder if she loved me at all, or if I was just another obligation in her perfect life, one more thing to manage and control. The comparisons started before I could even understand what they meant. I must have been 7 or 8 when I first remember my father saying it at the dinner table. "Why can't you be more like your brother Audrey?" Ethan made the honor roll again. "What happened to your grades?" My grades were fine. I had A's and B's. But Ethan's name was on a plaque in the school hallway, and mine wasn't so clearly I was failing. When I was 12, I won a regional coding competition. I came home so excited, clutching my certificate and small trophy bursting through the door to tell my parents. My father glanced up from his newspaper, looked at the trophy, and said, "That's nice, Audrey. Did you remember to take out the trash like I asked?" That same week, Ethan scored 2 touchdowns in a game. Dad took him out for a steak dinner, just the two of them. Man to man, he called it. I ate leftover casserole alone in the kitchen while Mom went to her book club. "Your brother has a girlfriend now," Mom said when I was 15, eyeing me with barely concealed disappointment. "When are you going to start dating? You need to make more of an effort with your appearance, honey. Boys don't like girls who always have their nose in a computer." I tried to explain that I wasn't interested in the boys at school, that I had other priorities, that maybe I was focused on my future. She just sighed like I was being deliberately difficult and went back to planning Ethan's birthday party. It was going to be a big event, she said. A milestone. He was turning 18. All his friends were coming. There would be a DJ and catering. When I turned 18, 3 years earlier, I got a cake from the grocery store and dinner at Applebee's. The constant refrain of my inadequacy became the soundtrack of my childhood. Why can't you be more social? Why can't you be more like Ethan? Why can't you try harder? Why can't you be different? The words piled up like stones, building a wall between who I was and who they wanted me to be until I could barely remember which side I was supposed to be on. "Almost stopped hearing it," I said. "But that's a lie. You never stop hearing it. It just moves inside your head and becomes your own voice, whispering that you're not good enough, that you'll never be good enough, that something fundamental is wrong with you." When I was 22, fresh out of college with a computer science degree and a mountain of student loan debt that my parents refused to help with because I had chosen a useless major, I made what they called my first big mistake. I moved back home. I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to, but the tech jobs were all in expensive cities and entry-level positions barely paid enough to cover rent, much less food and utilities and loan payments. I had sent out 200 applications and gotten 3 interviews. I needed a place to stay while I figured things out. Just a few months, I told myself. Just until I land something. It was supposed to be temporary. It turned into 2 years of hell. Every single dinner became an interrogation. My father would sit at the head of our long mahogany table, the one he was so proud of because it cost $15,000 cutting his steak with precise, angry movements like he was dissecting my failures. He would ask me in that cold voice that expected exact answers how many applications I had sent out that day. 12, I would say. "Only 12, he would shake his head. "When I was your age, I was working 2 jobs and going to night school. You kids today don't know what real work is." It didn't matter that I was applying to specialized tech positions that required specific skills. It didn't matter that I was teaching myself new programming languages every night, building a portfolio networking online. To him, if I wasn't getting hired, it was because I wasn't trying hard enough. Meanwhile, Ethan breezed through life like he was born with a golden ticket. Right out of college, Dad gave him a position at the real estate company. Not an entry-level position, mind you, a junior partnership, with a salary that made my student loans look like pocket change. Within a year, he was driving a BMW and living in a downtown loft that Dad helped him buy. "Oh, but Ethan earned it," Dad would say when I dared to question the fairness. "He's a hard worker. He's ambitious. He's got what it takes." What I had apparently didn't count. Then, Ethan married Sophia, and I learned that my family could find new and creative ways to make me feel worthless. Sophia Chin was a knockout, the kind of woman who looked like she stepped off a magazine cover. Long dark hair, perfect skin, a smile that could sell anything. She had been Ethan's college sweetheart, a marketing major from a wealthy family, and she fit into the Vance world like she was born for it. She was also a viper in designer heels. Sophia had perfected the art of the insult disguised as concern. She would say things that sounded kind on the surface but left you feeling like garbage. The first time I met her at a family dinner, she looked me up and down and said, "Oh, Audrey, I just love how confident you are. I could never leave the house without makeup like you do. You're so brave." My mother actually nodded in agreement. "Sophia does always look put together, doesn't she? Maybe you could learn something from her Audrey." At family gatherings, Sophia would touch my arm with her perfectly manicured hand and say things like, "It must be so hard being single at your age. But don't worry, there's someone for everyone. Have you tried those dating apps? I hear they work for people who don't meet anyone naturally." Or she would laugh her tinkling little laugh and say to the room, "Audrey is just so focused on her career, which is so admirable." I mean, I couldn't imagine not having a man in my life, but everyone has different priorities. The thing about Sophia was that she was never outright mean. She never yelled or insulted me directly. She was too smart for that. Instead, she would smile sweetly, say something that sounded almost complimentary, and somehow leave me feeling small and inadequate. And because she was so beautiful and charming, everyone loved her. My parents treated her like the daughter they actually wanted. When Sophia announced she was pregnant a year into their marriage, my mother cried with joy. She threw Sophia an elaborate baby shower at the country club, invited 100 people, had it catered with champagne and petit fours. She spent weeks planning every detail, choosing the perfect decorations, the perfect gifts, making sure everything was absolutely perfect for her first grandchild. I remember standing in the corner of that baby shower, watching my mother fuss over Sophia, watching my father beam with pride about his legacy, continuing watching Ethan play the devoted husband, and feeling invisible. I was holding a glass of cheap champagne. I didn't want wearing a dress I had bought on clearance, and wondering why I had even bothered to come. Sophia walked up to me, her hand resting on her small baby bump, and said with that sugary sweet smile, "Your mom is just the best. I'm so lucky to have her as a mother-in-law. I hope you find someone someday so you can experience this kind of love too." She said it loud enough that people nearby heard, loud enough that they looked at me with pity. Poor Audrey, still alone, still struggling, still the disappointment. That was my family. My father who measured my worth in dollar signs I didn't have. My mother who loved me conditionally and found me lacking. My brother who coasted on privilege and pretended he had earned everything. And Sophia the snake in designer clothing who had mastered the art of cruelty disguised as kindness. They didn't just make me feel worthless. They convinced me that I was worthless. That everything I was trying to build, everything I cared about, didn't matter because I didn't matter. "Oh, Audrey," she would say, reaching over to pat my hand with her manicured fingers. "I just love how you don't care what people think about your appearance. It's so brave." Then she would turn to my mother and compliment her dress, her hair, anything, leaving me sitting there in my jeans and simple sweater feeling like trash. The worst part was not the insults themselves. It was the way my parents nodded along, smiled, agreed. It was the way my mother would pull me aside later and suggest gently that maybe I should try a little harder with my appearance. Maybe that's why I was still single. Maybe that's why I couldn't find a good job. I want to pause here and tell you something important. If you're in a family like this, it's not your fault. The people who are supposed to love you unconditionally shouldn't make you feel like you have to earn that love. Remember that as I continue this story. So I stopped trying to make them understand me. Instead, I worked. Late at night, after another humiliating dinner, I would go up to my childhood bedroom, the one they never bothered to redecorate with its faded purple walls and posters from high school, and I would code. I built websites for small businesses. I did freelance programming work. I taught myself new languages, new frameworks, new technologies. And then, about 18 months into living back at home, I had an idea. The freelance market was chaotic, disorganized, full of scammers and flakes on both sides. What if there was a platform that actually worked? One that verified workers, screened clients, handled payments securely, and made the whole process transparent. I spent 6 months building the first version of my app. I called it Freelance Bridge. I launched it with no fanfare, no announcement to my family. Why would I tell them? They would just mock it, call it another one of my little hobbies, another thing I would fail at. Except I didn't fail. Within 2 months, I had 5,000 users. Within 6 months, 50,000. The app worked because I understood both sides of the equation. I knew what freelancers needed because I was one. I knew what clients wanted because I had been screwed over enough times to know what real accountability looked like. I made my first $1 million when I was 24 years old. I was living in my childhood bedroom, eating my mother's passive-aggressive casseroles, listening to my father ask me every single day when I was going to get a real job. And I had $1 million in a business account they knew nothing about. I didn't tell them. I know that sounds crazy, but you have to understand the dynamic. If I had told them then, when the money was new and the success was fragile, they would have found a way to take it from me. They would have demanded I invest in my father's business, or they would have guilt-tripped me into paying off Ethan's student loans, or they would have simply taken credit for my success by claiming their tough love had motivated me. So I stayed quiet. I played the role of the disappointing daughter. I sat through dinners where Ethan bragged about closing a big real estate deal while I said nothing about acquiring my 10th corporate client. I listened to Sophia humble brag about their expensive vacations while I said nothing about the 6-figure profit quarter I had just closed. It was torture, but it was also strategic. I was gathering evidence. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every time they chose Ethan over me, I filed it away. I was building my case, though I didn't know yet what that case would be. The app kept growing. I hired developers, customer service reps, marketing people. I ran everything remotely, taking calls from my bedroom with the door locked, muting myself when my mother yelled up the stairs asking if I wanted lunch. I was running a multi-million-dollar company out of my childhood bedroom, and nobody in my family had a clue. By the time I was 26, Freelance Bridge had 2 million active users and annual revenue in the 8 figures. I could have moved out 100 times over. I could have bought a house, a car, anything I wanted. But I stayed because somewhere in the back of my mind, a plan was forming. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday in November, about 9 months ago now. Dad called a family meeting, which was never a good sign. We all gathered in the living room of the house, the same living room where I had been told countless times that I was wasting my potential. Ethan and Sophia sat on the couch looking concerned. Mom perched on the edge of her favorite chair, wringing her hands. Dad stood by the fireplace like a general addressing his troops. He told us the company was in trouble, bad investments, a development deal that had gone south, loans coming due. He needed money, a lot of it fast. He looked at Ethan first, asked if he could take out a personal loan. Ethan hedged, said things were tight with the new baby coming. Then Dad looked at me. "Can you ask your friends for money?" he said. That was how he referred to the few people I had mentioned in passing. "Your computer friends. Maybe one of them has rich parents or something." I should have laughed. I should have walked out. Instead, I saw an opportunity. "I have some money saved," I said quietly. "How much do you need?" Dad named a figure. $250,000. An impossible sum for the failure daughter who couldn't even pay her own rent, or so he thought. I watched his face, saw the calculation there. He was asking, but he didn't expect me to have it. This was performative, a way to later say he had asked everyone, even useless Audrey. "I can loan you that," I said, "but I need collateral." The room went silent. Ethan laughed an ugly sound. Dad frowned like I had said something offensive. Mom looked confused. "Collateral," Dad repeated. "Audrey, if you have that kind of money, which I doubt, this is your family, we don't do collateral." "Then you don't need the money that badly," I said. I stood up to leave. "Wait," Mom said quickly. "Richard, if she's serious, maybe we should hear her out." Dad's face went through several expressions, pride and desperation, wrestling for dominance. Desperation won. "Fine," he said. "What do you want?" "The house," I said. "Sign the deed over to me. When you pay me back, I sign it back. It's just insurance." Dad exploded. "Absolutely not. This house has been in the Vance family for 30 years. I'm not signing it over to my daughter who can't even hold down a job." But Mom was looking at me differently now. She was doing math in her head. "If you have $250,000, Audrey, where did it come from?" "I saved it," I lied smoothly. "Freelance work, investments. I've been careful." It was Sophia who spoke next, her voice saccharine. "That's amazing, Audrey. I didn't know you were doing so well, but maybe your dad is right. The house seems like a big ask for a family loan." I shrugged. "Then go to a bank." "Oh, wait, you can't, can you, because your credit is maxed out and your debt-to-income ratio is shot." I had been doing my homework, quietly checking public records business filings. I knew exactly how bad things were. Dad looked like he wanted to hit me, but he needed that money more than he needed his pride. We went back and forth for 2 hours. Finally, he agreed. We would do it through lawyers, make it official. The house would be in my name as collateral for the loan. He had 2 years to pay me back with reasonable interest. If he paid, I would transfer the house back. If he didn't, the house was mine. We signed the papers 3 days later. I wired him the money from one of my business accounts. My lawyer, who my parents assumed was just some cheap legal aid, was actually one of the best contract attorneys in the state. The agreement was ironclad. For a while, things were almost better. Dad didn't thank me, but he stopped making quite so many comments about my failures. Mom even asked about my work once or twice, though she clearly didn't understand what I did. Ethan avoided me probably because I had shown him up by having money when he didn't. I should have moved out then. I had the money, I had the freedom. But something kept me there. Maybe it was the same instinct that had kept me quiet all those years. I was waiting for something, though I didn't know what. The months passed. Dad's company stabilized. He made a few payments on the loan enough to claim he was honoring our agreement, but not enough to make a real dent. I didn't push it. I was busy with my own company, which was growing faster than I had ever imagined. We were getting acquisition offers, serious ones, from major tech companies. I turned them all down. Freelance Bridge was mine, built from nothing in a bedroom where nobody believed in me. Then came the invitation to the New Year's Eve party. Dad was throwing a big celebration, a combination of New Year and a celebration of the company's recovery. He insisted I come. "Dress nice," he said. "Try to look presentable. We'll have important people there." I almost didn't go, but something in me, some old wound that wouldn't quite heal, wanted to see it. Wanted to see them celebrating their success, the success I had literally funded while still treating me like I was nothing. So I went. I wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, and showed up at 7. The house was transformed, full of twinkle lights and expensive champagne and people in designer clothes. Dad had hired a catering company, a string quartet. It looked like a scene from a movie about the wealthy. All of it funded by my money, my loan, my success that nobody knew about. I found a corner and sat down with a glass of sparkling water. I watched my family work the room. Dad in his element shaking hands and laughing too loud. Mom playing the gracious hostess. Ethan and Sophia holding court with a group of young professionals probably bragging about something. Nobody talked to me. A few people asked who I was, and when I said I was Richard's daughter, they would say, "Oh," and then find an excuse to move on. I was the embarrassing relative, the one you had to invite, but hoped would stay quiet in the corner. Then came the speech. Dad clinked his glass at midnight, called for everyone's attention. He stood by the fireplace, beaming, and launched into a story about the company's near failure and miraculous recovery. He talked about hard work, about family loyalty, about the Vance legacy. He thanked Ethan for his dedication and business acumen. He thanked Sophia for her support. He thanked Mom for standing by him. He didn't mention me. Not once, not even in passing. I had literally saved his company, his house, his entire life, and he acted like I didn't exist. That was the moment. That was the Giada Nuke Tran Lee, as you might say. The last straw. The moment when something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped. I stood up. I walked to the center of the room. I interrupted my father mid-sentence. "Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the party chatter like a knife. "I think you forgot something in your speech." He looked at me annoyed. "Audrey, not now. I'm giving a toast." "No," I said. "Now is perfect. Because you just spent 20 minutes talking about how you saved the company, but you left out a pretty important detail." The room was silent now. Everyone was looking at me. I could see Ethan's face turning red, Sophia's fake smile freezing in place, Mom's hand going to her throat. "You forgot to mention who actually saved your company," I continued. "You forgot to mention the $250,000 loan, the one that kept you from losing everything, the one that you still haven't paid back, by the way." Dad's face went pale, then red. "Audrey," he hissed, "stop it now." But I was done stopping. I was done being quiet. The words poured out of me like water from a broken dam. 9 months ago, you came to me begging for money. You who had spent years telling me I was worthless, who couldn't even acknowledge my existence in your toast just now. You needed money, and nobody else would give it to you. So you came to your failure daughter and asked for $250,000, and I gave it to you. Do you know why I had that money, Dad? Because while you were telling me to get a real job, I was building a company. While you were comparing me to Ethan, I was building something worth more than you've made in your entire career. While you were making me feel like garbage, I was becoming a millionaire. The room was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned it so everyone could see. The number on the screen had so many zeros that people actually gasped. "This is my personal account," I said. "My business account has more. The company I built, Freelance Bridge, has over 2 million users now. We're worth $40 million. I did that. The daughter you're ashamed of, the one you didn't even mention tonight, did that." Ethan found his voice. "You're lying," he said, but it sounded weak. "This has to be fake." I pulled out a USB drive from my purse and walked over to the laptop Dad kept on the side table for presentations. Within seconds, I had documents on the big TV screen: bank statements, business filings, tax returns, the loan agreement with Dad's signature proving that the house they were standing in was actually mine. "The house is mine," I said. "That was the collateral. You haven't made a payment in 4 months, Dad. According to our agreement, that means I can call the loan due immediately. This house, the one you just threw a party in, it's mine. All of you are standing in my house celebrating my father's success when really you should be celebrating me." Mom burst into tears. Dad looked like he was having a heart attack. Ethan started yelling, saying I was trying to ruin the family, that I was making all of this up. Sophia actually laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. But the guests, the important business people my father wanted to impress, they were looking at me differently now, with respect, with interest. One of them, a venture capitalist I recognized from news articles, actually came up to me. "Freelance Bridge is yours," he asked. "I've been trying to get a meeting with the founder for months." And just like that, the power in the room shifted. I was no longer the disappointment daughter in the corner. I was the secret millionaire, the tech founder, the one who held all the cards. I didn't stay for the rest of the party. I left them there in my house, dealing with the fallout. I went back to my childhood bedroom one last time, packed my laptop and a few personal items, and checked into a hotel. The next morning, I called a real estate agent and bought myself a proper home, a lakefront property with 5 bedrooms and a view that took my breath away. I paid cash. Then I waited for the inevitable. It came 2 days later. A legal notice hand delivered to my hotel. My family was suing me for fraud, claiming I had coerced my father into signing over the house, that the loan was invalid, that I had taken advantage of him in a moment of weakness. I called my lawyer, Daniel Chin, the same one who had drafted the original loan agreement. He read the lawsuit and actually laughed. "They have no case," he said. "The agreement is solid. They're desperate." "I know," I said, "but I want to be thorough. I want every piece of evidence we can find." Daniel went to work. What he found was even better than I had hoped for. While digging into my family's finances for the case, he discovered things. Ethan's real estate deals had irregularities. My father had been cooking the books, hiding income-evading taxes for years. There were shell companies, fraudulent write-offs, money laundering through property transactions. "We have enough here to bury them," Daniel said at our meeting. "Not just win the case, actually bury them. If we turn this over to the IRS and the state attorney, your father and brother could go to prison." I sat in Daniel's office looking at the stack of evidence, and I thought about everything they had done to me. Every insult, every comparison, every moment they made me feel worthless. I thought about the girl I used to be crying in her bedroom, wondering why she wasn't good enough for her own family. "Do it," I said. "Turn everything over. Let them face consequences for once in their lives." The court date arrived. I walked into that courtroom in a designer suit, my hair professionally done, looking like the successful businesswoman I was. My family sat on the other side with their lawyer, a sleazy-looking man who specialized in family law and intimidation tactics. Their case was built on emotions. Their lawyer painted me as a vindictive daughter who tricked her poor father. He talked about family loyalty, about how children should respect their parents. He made it sound like I was the villain in some melodrama. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stood up calm and professional and destroyed them piece by piece. He presented the loan agreement, showed that it had been reviewed by multiple attorneys, that my father had been advised to seek independent counsel and had refused. He showed the payment history, proving that my father had defaulted on the loan. He displayed text messages where my father had thanked me, had admitted the house was collateral, had promised to pay me back. And then came the kicker. Daniel presented a video. It was from the night of the loan signing, security camera footage from the lawyer's office. In it, my father could be heard clearly saying that he understood the terms, that the house would be collateral, that he was agreeing to everything freely. He was shaking hands with me, thanking me for saving him. The judge looked at my father with disgust. "So you lied under oath," he said. "You claimed your daughter coerced you, but here you are on video, clearly agreeing to everything." My father's lawyer tried to do damage control, but it was too late. The judge dismissed the case, ruled that the house was legally mine, and warned my family not to harass me further or face contempt of court charges. We won, but Daniel wasn't done. As we left the courthouse, he pulled me aside. "I've already sent the financial documents to the relevant authorities," he said. "Your father and brother should be getting visits from federal agents within the week." I nodded. I should have felt guilty. These were my family members, and I was essentially destroying their lives. But all I felt was relief. After years of being crushed under their contempt, I was finally free. The fallout was spectacular. Within a month, my father's company was under investigation. Bank accounts were frozen. Property was seized. Ethan, who had been part of the fraud, faced his own charges. They tried calling me, texting me, begging me to make it stop. My mother left voicemails crying, asking how I could do this to my own family. I blocked their numbers. I had said everything I needed to say. Sophia, interestingly enough, filed for divorce from Ethan within 2 weeks of the scandal breaking. Turned out she loved the Vance money and status, but not Ethan himself. She took whatever assets hadn't been frozen and disappeared. I actually respected that in a twisted way. At least she was honest about being a gold digger. The criminal trial lasted 6 months. Both my father and Ethan were found guilty of tax evasion and fraud. Dad got 3 years in federal prison. Ethan got 18 months. Mom lost everything. The house they had thought was theirs, the cars, the retirement accounts, all gone. She moved into a small apartment in a bad part of town, living on whatever she could get from selling jewelry and furniture. She tried to contact me once more about 3 months ago. She showed up at my office, somehow got past security. She looked 10 years older, worn down by everything that had happened. She begged me to help her, said she had nothing, that she was my mother. I looked at her, this woman who had stood by while my father destroyed my self-worth, who had compared me to Ethan every single day, who had never once defended me or believed in me. "You had a daughter," I said. "You had a daughter who would have done anything for your love and approval. But you made me feel worthless every single day of my life. You stood by while Dad crushed my spirit. You laughed along when Ethan mocked me. You never asked about my dreams or my goals or my happiness. You only cared about how I made you look to your friends. So, no, I won't help you. You taught me that family is conditional, that love has to be earned. Well, you never earned mine." She left crying. I haven't heard from her since. Now I sit in my beautiful lakefront house, running my company, living the life I built for myself. Freelance Bridge just closed a funding round that valued us at over $100 million. I have real friends now, people who value me for who I am. I'm dating someone who thinks I'm brilliant, who listens when I talk about code and business strategy, who makes me laugh. Sometimes I think about my family and wonder if I went too far. Then I remember that they sued me first. They tried to take away what I had built, tried to paint me as the villain, just because I finally stood up for myself. I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves with their greed and their lies. I just refused to be their safety net anymore. The text messages still come sometimes from prison email systems or my mother's number I haven't blocked yet. They ask for money for help with legal fees for a second chance. Each time I delete them without responding. Some houses aren't worth returning to because the foundation was poison from the start. I built my own house now, one with strong walls and clear boundaries. One where I'm not the disappointment, not the failure, not the shadow in the corner. I'm the owner, the builder, the architect of my own life. And that's worth more than their approval ever was. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. If you're in a toxic family situation, if you're being made to feel worthless by the people who should love you most, know that their judgment of you is not the truth. Your worth is not determined by people who can't see your value. Sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing their game and build your own. Set your boundaries, protect your peace, build your empire. And when they come crawling back, and you get to decide if they're worth letting in. Some doors once closed should stay closed forever. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut off family members? What was your breaking point? Drop your story in the comments below. Hit that like button if this resonated with you and subscribe for more stories about standing up and taking back your power. Your support means everything, and remember, you're worth more than anyone's judgment. The people who matter will see your worth. Everyone else. They can watch your success from a distance,